nobles here today? Anybody from nobility? That's good, because I'm going to offend you if you are. How about that, huh? Because the thing is today, y'all, we're celebrating this feast of Christ the King. How about that, huh? And the thing is, on this feast of Christ the King, we get to think about what a king is, but we also get to think about how Jesus Christ came to be a different kind of king. And actually, you know what? Most of us have never lived in a monarchy. Actually, I know one person here has, because I see Andrew Watson, our employee who was born in Scotland. He's sitting back there now, huh? So that's it, kind of it. So he was born under a monarchy, but he's an American citizen now. Yay! Which is good, huh? But the thing about that is because most of the time, you know, when we think about monarchs, so we might just think about a few kings from history. We might think about, in France there was Louis XIV, known as the Sun King, and then Louis XVI, his grandson, a little later. Not so good, huh? How about that? And then we might think of Henry VIII, and we might think about some of the early kings in England. Maybe we don't know a lot about kings because we don't have that experience. But there's one little thing here. I was going to quote something from a very famous kind of thing. It's from something called The Pirates of Penzance. And I don't know if y'all have ever heard of this. If you were 150 years old, this would be very popular, y'all. That's kind of the way it goes. It was written by some English guys named Gilbert and Sullivan. And the thing is, they wrote this opera about pirates. And so there was one pirate who was considered a pirate king. And so he sings this song, and this is kind of what he quotes. Because he says, "But many a king on a first-class throne, if he wishes to call his crown his own, must manage somehow to get through more dirty work than ever I do." How about that, huh? And that's a quote from a pirate king talking about the kind of nastiness that political kings have to go through. And the thing is, it's kind of true. Because when we think about history, we think about kings kind of acting for themselves. Oh, they might be sitting on a throne because of something called divine right or divine lineage, because they would go ahead and say that God put me here on this throne. Well, that was just to go ahead and kind of uphold human power in in his reign. But yet at the same time, though, my brothers and sisters, if we're going to think about divine right, if we're going to think about that kind of divine lineage, well, then we don't think about any earthly king at all. We can't do it, because they're sinners just like we are. And some of them, as we kind of hear from that quote from the Pirate King, they've done much dirtier things than anything we would ever have to do, thanks be to God. But yet at the same time, my brothers and sisters, as we think about Jesus Christ, our King, well, becomes a paradox. Because while we heard in our first reading how there in Hebron, King David was crowned as the King of Israel, and he kind of led a golden age of the Jewish monarchy back in the day. Well, the thing is, today we hear about Jesus' coronation, and Jesus' coronation in our gospel. You know what? It does not sound like a coronation, because where does it take place? It takes place on a cross. If we think about Jesus Christ showing that he was Jesus Christ the King, well, we hear right now that as Jesus is being crucified, and he's the object of all kinds of degradation, all kinds of insults, all kinds of slurs, even though he's an innocent man, well, we go ahead and hear how now Jesus Christ is being recognized by one person as the King, as the one who came down from heaven, as the one who's the real monarch and the real leader, because could he possibly be the Son of God? But we hear these words spoken by this supposedly thief on the cross. And we hear him say, "Hey, Jesus, you know what? Would you remember me when you come into your kingdom?" And Jesus goes ahead and realizes that this man recognizes who he is. This thief, in the midst of his sin, in the midst of his degradation, in the midst of his now execution for his crimes, well, he knows who Jesus is. He recognizes that Jesus Christ is the Lord. Jesus Christ is the one who's Lord of all, and he is the Son of God. And so Jesus says to him, "Well, today you will be with me in paradise." Jesus Christ makes a royal proclamation to this man dying on the cross, but as he does so, he's pointing out just the kind of power he has. Jesus has the power as the King of both heaven and earth to bring all things to himself and to save all things. Jesus Christ, as we follow him, raises us up out of our degradation, and he actually allows us to be part of his holy people, part of his royal line. And that royal line first starts, for many of us here around the baptismal font, as we go ahead and become part of the mission of Christ as we're baptized. Because just like Jesus died on the cross and then rose, so through baptism, we die in those waters of baptism in a sacramental sense, but then rise to eternal life to be like Jesus Christ and to follow him. Take up our cross and follow Jesus, because Jesus is priest, prophet, and king. And by that baptism, well, we then sacramentally, we celebrate the fact that we are now part of God's royal family. It should make us different. It should go ahead and make us realize that we're part of a royal line, and we have to maintain that line and the nobility of that line throughout all of our lives. But the other way that we acknowledge Jesus Christ as King is to go ahead and live a life of faith, live a life of grace, and live a life of forgiveness, live a life of charity and love. Go ahead and doing what Jesus Christ did. Because, my brothers and sisters, that's what any member of the noble class would do in following their king, is follow his example. So, my brothers and sisters, that's got to be what we must do, is follow the example of Jesus Christ as we go ahead and make him king of our hearts, king of our minds, king of our lives, king of our faith, but also the one who leads us in all things that are holy. And I think the thing is today, my brothers and sisters, I'd ask you all to join me in a little exercise, a little spiritual exercise. It's not a bad thing. I think if we can, maybe just look at that second reading again. Because the thing is, my brothers and sisters, this second reading is important. Because it helps us realize that by Jesus going ahead and dying in that kind of dark way on the cross, but then as he rose to become light from light, true God from true God, well, so my brothers and sisters, Jesus Christ has enlightened us. He's enlightened us with faith. He's enlightened us with hope. He's enlightened us with love. But he also has enlightened us with an idea that we can be part of a royal family, that we could also be elevated by our God, away from the degradation of our sin, the darkness of our sin, but we become children of light. We become children of grace and children of peace. And so, my brothers and sisters, with that, we might go ahead and think about how Jesus Christ was, and we might spend some time thinking about what St. Paul wrote here to the Church of Colossae as he writes about who Jesus Christ is. Because this little phrase right here, and these little phrases at the very beginning of Paul's letter to that church, well, it's a little summary of who Jesus Christ is. It's a summary of what we might say in the theological terms is a summary of Christology. And it's a profound Christology, which I think we could all meditate on and think about and maybe incorporate into our prayers this week. Because it tells us that, Jesus Christ, he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all things in heaven and earth were created, and the visible and the invisible, their thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. In other words, all of creation was created through Jesus. All things were created through him and for him. And it also tells us that he is before all things. He was with God when God first spoke all creation into being. And in him, all things hold together. Jesus Christ is that kind of amazing, kind of a divine glue that brings all things together in holiness. It also tells us that he is the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that all things in him might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile all things for him, making peace. Now, Jesus Christ did make peace, but St. Paul goes ahead and wants us to know about this paradox, because the thing is, earthly kings do not readily give their lives over for the sake of their people. But it says that Jesus, he made peace by the blood of his cross. Where Jesus Christ was crowned king of the universe, king of heaven, king of earth, on the cross, where he suffered and died for us. Well, my brothers and sisters, he brought peace to Christians. He brought peace to us. And he's going to bring peace to all creation for eternity. Because through him, and the thing is, all heaven and earth come together. So let's think about these things. Let's reflect on them. Let's meditate on them. And today, as we receive the body and blood of Christ, which is also a sign of our union with God, let's turn to God and ever more fully make Jesus Christ the King of our hearts, our minds, and our souls.